things happening. One, there'll be an outcome and a strategy by staff and HATS and their partners to evaluate the success of this and report on it properly. And two, there's an exit strategy before they ever set the pilot up. There'll be an exit strategy for year 2 before the pilot is set up. So this is not going to be something that's going to be staying here after the pilot's done. There'll be an exit strategy agreed to at the beginning.
Let her speak. Yeah, give her the mic. Give her the mic.
Firstly, I just have a question regarding the protocol, Aaron. You say you are conceding us to not have tents when the HATS program is there, but by the protocol it says they can't be allowed within 50 meters of a fitness amenity, which I would argue that multimodal path is, so they can't be there anyways by protocol, as I understand it. So there's no concession for us.
Yeah, keep your back turned, look at that speaker. You listen to her?
I think we have a really good question over here, and this is something we've been talking about quite a bit. And we know that in the survey that is now empty, they've been talking about developing it, which is great. We want to see it develop, but why is it not being developed right now? Because of CN. So what does CN say about this encampment being within 100 meters of the tracks or less? Why is it being allowed to go there when they're not allowed to build?
I'll answer as many questions as I can in the time we have. So, your question is about whether if it's 50 meters from a facility.
No, the question is, you say the city is conceding to us to not have tents from Bay to Ferguson if the HATS project goes. But by protocol, they can't be within 50 meters of a fitness amenity. That's a multimodal, jogging, running, playing, biking, path. That limits the tent period.
My understanding is that the fitness amenity means a structure, a building, something like that. That's my understanding. I'm just
Hey, people run around track. Fitness amenity for outside. Define it.
So, this isn't a zoning issue. The issue of CN Railway, the issue of CN Railway is a zoning issue with respect to what's happening with Janesville. So there's a settlement going on right now, discussions. There's folks that are before the Ontario Land Tribunal discussing that. That's not the issue here. It's not a zoning issue here. Only a portion of the Janesville site is actually within that zoning period anyways. This is not within that same threshold.
It wouldn't
My
be.
understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not in that same threshold, but it is closer to the tracks than what the others would be. So it doesn't make sense in my brain. I don't know about anybody else, but it doesn't make sense. They should be allowed to build, so they're not allowed to build there. And why would we want to put these people that are trying to get back on their feet even closer and even more in the bad zone?
It hasn't been determined if they can't build there. There's just discussions going around what it's going to look like. I'm going to take your next question. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for coming out and organizing this. So, I have to admit, I'm a bit disappointed we're having this in the school gym. Okay? When the report was reviewed, was there any consideration for 520 kids that attend Bennetto, and some of them walk, and some of them ride their bikes?
Yeah.
So on both sides, you have playgrounds for kids from all around. Okay? Here we go. So you have 520 roughly going to school, probably another 80 going to daycare, then we have another school up the road. So we're talking about 900 kids going through the neighborhood. Now, if the HATS recommendation did not fit with this type of a residential area, I'm very perplexed as to how this may have been overlooked or not seriously considered. Considering other sites may not have as much traffic flow and have just as many young people.
respond to some of the issues.
Okay, I'll let somebody else answer that.
I'm saying no,
You answer it.
dramatic.
You answer it.
So right now, and for the last 3 years, I must say, there's been on and off camp and on strong. That's been the reality.
It's not true. I'm in front. It's the first year we're having a storm. On Strong Street. That's the first year we have. It's not true.
Liar!
I hope you guys don't mind it took a few minutes. In light of there being no public consultation, I hope you'll give me the courtesy to share a few thoughts on Pat's project on behalf of probably not all of my neighbors, but many. I am a mom of 4 and a lifelong resident of the North End who has lived within a 3-block radius my entire life. I grew up poor in the Jamesville survey. Forgive me if I sound scrappy and passionate, it's because I am old stock North End. I love this neighborhood since it was before all the rage. While I appreciate the heartfelt intention of the HATS program, I personally disagree in principle of the idea of tiny homes, period. Especially in light of your chosen site, a residential neighborhood, a mere 10 meters over the approved distance from a school. It is unfair to think that anyone who disagrees with your approach to homelessness means you do not care for them or we lack compassion. I personally do not believe in Band-Aid solutions, and this is what this is. It's a multi-million-dollar Band-Aid when you factor in the costs. Imagine what you could do to help more than 25 people with a large amount of money. I'm thinking somewhere around $3 million. When you include the $1 million a year security and all of the other costs, I may not quite be off, but I know 1.5, sorry. Still, you can do a lot for 1.5.
More than the time.
Make no mistake, this is not a case of NIMBYism. I don't want this in anybody's backyard. I have lost 4 members to the perils of addiction and mental health crisis. My own sister died at the age of 35. My uncle just died a month ago from chronic homelessness on the streets of Toronto. We have our own lived experiences that formulate our thoughts and opinions, and they matter. I can guarantee, if they were with me today, they would say they deserve more than a shed. The fact that we own homes or have secure housing should not preclude us from having a voice in this matter.
Amen.
Or that we don't dare to speak up, as alluded to by your staff member. There's a larger issue than house value, but that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, you're stuck here.
Yeah, we just went down 20%.
What has been allowed to happen this spring and summer in our parks throughout the city is a travesty, and you are part of that. While it is wrong to characterize every camp resident as such, it is harmful to disregard the criminal activity that exists in camping culture. Citizens and tender-age children have been exposed to open drug use, sex acts, public urination, defecation, and even prostitution across the street from Irina's house.
Across my house, I see it. I see it.
Yeah, we believe her.
You prohibited it, yet you did nothing about it. The truth is, many children and families in the North End cannot afford a summer vacation to Europe like you, or a week at a cottage like many of us. I rented a trailer. I was lucky to do so. I know as a kid, I never made it farther than a park soupy, and even those were taken away in some of our parks this summer. For many families in our neighborhoods, daily visits to safe parks are their summer vacation. Shame on you, Cameron, and others in council for taking their break from the cities, the families in the city this summer.
Yeah.
considering the HATS project and a canyon in a different form.
Me too.
Allowing it to go forward in a residential neighborhood demonstrates a continued lack of regard for the children and citizens of the North. Though it is changing, it must be acknowledged that the North End schools are deemed high priority due to low student achievement and their high needs based on census data, standardized tests, and their life experiences. Children and teens in the North End have many odds stacked against them. You cannot add to their anxiety. You cannot normalize encampment culture, lifestyle for anyone, let alone a vulnerable population. Seeing an encampment daily that requires 24-hour security does not scream safety. Having your neighborhood rec center guarded by security does not scream safety. I hold strongly that the activities transpiring in these spaces require $1 million of taxpayer money for security per year. They don't belong in a residential neighborhood.
Here, here.
Just a childhood story. I had an epiphany the other night. I was reminded of shoe shopping with my mother. Some of you will remember jelly shoes. I so desperately wanted them that I told my mother they fit, when in fact they were excruciatingly small. I suffered. Councillor Kroetsch, Mayor Porta, the HATS pilot project and location choice are your jelly shoes. They just don't fit.
Here, here.
Thank you, Kelly. I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. Passionate in the North End. I don't disagree about that at all. There's a lot to talk about in terms of how we ended up in this place, how we have a city that has encampments everywhere, why this isn't something that's happening in most North American cities, and why it's so bad in Canada. That's a real conversation to have. Across the lower city, and not everywhere else in our city. Why the services have been located in the downtown core predominantly for many, many years. Why those services haven't been spread across the city. And why downtown Hamilton is meant to face the brunt of this over and over again. I completely agree. I'm going to go to someone who hasn't spoken yet.
Yesterday from Daniel Salvatore, Manager of Public Affairs, and he said, CN is aware of and in communication with the City of Hamilton over the proposed tiny homes project. Any new housing built in close proximity to active rail lines increases the risk of people entering the railway parking, which can result in fatal or life-changing injuries. How do we know that this project would get started and CN, like they did on Jamesville, rolls in late in the project and shuts it down? And then my other question is this.
I'll answer your first question if you don't mind, I'll repeat it. Kathy asked why, how do we know that CN's not going to roll in on this project at some point in the future and shut it down? And so it's not the same kind of zoning situation. They don't have rights to appeal this project. They are absolutely talking about it, but there's no appeal rights to the zoning. I'll answer the second question. Go ahead.
The other question is back to Barton Tiffany, which was on the list for forever, both from HATS and the City of Hamilton. By the way, the City of Hamilton owns 1,910 properties. Right now, people are camping at Barton and Tiffany. It is paved, a large section of it has more shade than Strong Street. The city is leaving the gates open, so allowing people to camp there. So obviously, no one's concerned about them contacting contaminated soil. So there's two different dynamics going on here. And the fact that so much of this was done in closed session or over coffee, and the citizens didn't hear till the last minute, very little opportunity to delegate to council. That's the reason why there are two FOIs to the city over this process, a complaint to the Ombudsman, and perhaps an appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal over that public use zoning that was pulled out of the hat.
Questions being asked about Bart and Tiffany a couple times, so I'll do my best to answer that question. We'll be having another meeting in mid-September. We'll have city staff at the meeting. They can go over some more of the details than I can. But what I will say is that when they evaluated Bart and Tiffany in Cathedral Park, they found two things. There would be a problem providing any kind of services there. Way more difficult than it would be to provide them in Strong. That's what city staff found. They found
How
land
so?
contaminated. They also said that they're in the process of trying to figure out how to implement the new protocol we just approved. And no one thinks that people should be camped out in a contaminated site, and I believe the city will address that. The same problem existed in Cathedral Park. When they started to look at Cathedral Park, they noticed a huge water main problem and potentially contaminated soil there as well. So the reason why those two projects weren't chosen for those locations, that's the reason why. You may disagree with the reason, I'm just repeating the reason that I was told. I'm not a land use plan. Go ahead.
We build housing on contaminated soil all the time. These tiny shelters are going to be above ground. Like that lady already said, there's already a hard cap present on the property. Why can't there be risk management measures built into these tiny shelters to reduce any potential impacts for contamination?
Specifically on the Bart and Tiffany site you're talking about, right now the film studio who is working on a project to develop the entire area is still in the middle of doing environmental assessments, hasn't filed a record of site condition, and they're not even willing to put a commercial building on that property because of the dangers with the erosion.
They're not willing to do it
Right,
because
so
it's
I'm
cost.
saying the Bart and Tiffany program, they said the risk was too high. That's what they said.
But if we're
It's not for us.
So I'm saying to you, there's no previous adjustable use.
that's not a reason, it's being used as a commercial parking lot, it's a commercial use, different to get rid of site conditions before you use it for residential land.
That's not what city staff told me again. When they come here, I can't answer beyond what they told me.
Well, I mean,
So I'm sure-
Bring him down. Bring him down.
My question's really for you, Cameron. Where do you live?
Listen to Loretta.
I don't have children.
Do you plan on having children?
How fucking
Can I
convenient.
go to the parents in this neighborhood? No, I do. Many of these people have children that are going to this very school.
Yeah.
How would you feel about that if that was your neighborhood, your elderly parents, your children? How would you feel?
I would accept this site in my neighborhood. No, there's not been environmental.
Why not? Why not?
So therefore, we can't put houses there because it might be contaminated. Are you willing to proceed?
It's my understanding, based on the initial site survey that's now in, the land is not contaminated. That's my understanding.
Before the national record, can I see environmental stuff done?
This question says, I mean, we're so questions on the answer we're going to hear them. When you ask them, is it
Or on
strong site?
potentially at the people?
Has there been an environmental assessment done at the Strong site? And I said no, in the initial survey of the Strong site, there was an environmental assessment done. There'll be a bunch of other things that happen before the pilot is set up. So the pilot's not set up before we do a final site survey. That's going to happen. If there's some major catastrophe or major situation that's uncovered that no one can possibly know about, that'll obviously get covered and discussed. At this present time, when we did the initial site survey, most said it'll be done before the pilot is set up this period. Your question, and then I can take questions from
Good afternoon, everyone. Full disclosure, I do not live in this neighborhood, but my roots are in this neighborhood. My grandparents, my great-grandparents, I'm a third-generation Hamiltonian. This is my neighborhood. I come down here when I want to feel like a part of Hamilton. This is the area that I come from. This is the heart of Hamilton. This is the heart of the immigrant story in Hamilton and all the people that built this great city. And what that woman said over there, and the one that was standing here not so long ago with that very impassioned speech, I wholeheartedly agree with everything she said. I think probably most people in the room agree with her. She's got a lived experience. It's very frustrating as a Hamiltonian, as a taxpayer, to be constantly treated as though we don't get it, we don't understand, we don't care. We just go to bed every night in our warm beds in our warm houses and not be concerned at all about other people who are out freezing or starving in the streets. If anybody here feels that way, you're not a human being. So to be accused of that is heinous, first of all. Second of all, as somebody whose roots are in this area, my grandparents and my great-grandparents, my grandparents entered Tribunal when they got off the train from Italy in the spring of 1939, right when the war was breaking out. And my grandparents, who didn't speak the language, who weren't allowed to live on that side of the railroad tracks, who had to somehow survive, so my grandmother traded her sugar for liquor, and then she traded her food to feed her 2 kids, who she raised, who were university educated, fought like hell to survive. Now, the reason they were able to do that is because they had stability, they had one another, they had a sense of family around them, and they had the mental and physical wherewithal to persevere, as so many people do with so many horrific stories that are much more challenging than that. We have to get to the facts of what the real problem here is. And tents and tiny houses are not solving the problem. Yes. Very politically correct. However, in essence, it is totally ineffectual. Period. End of story. And we really want to support them. We want them to be healthy members of our community. We don't want them staggering in and out of the streets when I'm driving and putting themselves and me at risk, looking for money for drugs. Okay? We don't want that. We don't want this around our children. I worked as a teacher for 30 years. I worked with at-risk youth. I'm well acquainted with this part of reality in life. Allowing people to normalize these kinds of behaviors around young children who are already struggling for various reasons is criminal. It's criminal.
Right on.
I'm going to give you a very quick example of a young man I met several years ago in Beverly Hills. He was working one of the top individuals in a Beverly Hills very high-end spa. And he was a twin. His name is Carlos. And he told me how he grew up in the streets of LA, what his struggles were, how his mother, how many children she had to feed on her own. And he had a twin brother. And his brother was on death row for murder. And I said, how in God's name did you end up here in Beverly Hills and he's on death row?
What's his name so I can Google it? I'm really interested about this story.
The answer he gave was, they took me out of that culture and that environment. They saved me by protecting me from that environment. So why are we going to do this to children in Hamilton? Why are we going to turn an area into...
So all homeless people are criminals? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what she said.
I think that's what you said. So you believe in deserving and undeserving poor?
No, I'm talking about children.
Yeah, what about children though? Like, so children can't be here?
At the end of the day, I don't want our city intentionally turned into a favela like happens in Brazil and other slums. Why are we intentionally allowing this in Hamilton? It shouldn't be happening.
I had something to talk about site selection. I was
involved in 2 Ontario Tribunal hearings. One, the verdict came out in 2013. The outcome of that, the city is supposed to reappropriate the houses along there for a recreational trail. Okay? This is mentioned in the master plan, the setting sail master plan, the West Harbor recreational plan, and as of 2018, OPA 238. So how come city staff didn't consult master plans with specific designations that we've already been to the tribunal for this? So why is the city reneging on that?
I'll do my best to answer the question on behalf of city staff. My understanding is because this is a pilot for a short period of time, that's why we